Welcome to another S&P 500 Trade Watch analysis. Today is August 28, 2022. Last week, we were waiting for J Powell's speech with the anticipation that the SPY will break out from its recent consolidation or the balance area after the speech, and we were not disappointed. The upside and downside scenario we had mapped out came into play on the day J Powell spoke, and in this video, we'll analyze the SPY, the QQQ IWM, and the FANG stock Apple and Tesla, and prepare some scenarios for the coming week. Stay tuned. Now here's what I posted on my Substack page before the speech, and here's what I put out. And this is the chart that I put out with a couple scenario. One is that it will come up to this edge of the balance area, and essentially it's a look above and fail, and then come back down into the this lower range of the expected move, last week's expected move. And the other one is look below and fail, and then come back in. But here's the scenario that play out, the number one scenario. And here's the updated chart of the SPY. As you can see, the price came up out of this balance area and look above, and then came back in. And we see it fell and then went into this area, this lower range of the expected move, and actually went all the way down to the edge of the balance area, the lower edge, and came down below it, dipped down below it. So next, we're going to analyze the SPY and see what we could expect for the coming week. All right, let's take a look at this SPY. This is a 390-minute chart, and the reason why I'm doing that is because of the volume profile software that I'm using would not aggregate the data to generate daily profile charts. So I basically kind of use a workaround. 390-minute represents 6.5 hours. In each trading session is 6.5 hours. So that's how I get around to it. Anyway, let's start off with the upper range of the expected move. And that is going to be between 416.30 to 415.75. And the lower range of the weekly expected move is between 394.85 and 391. And as you can see, we saw the price penetrate to this high volume zone and dip below it. This balance area is between 415 and 408. And it closed near this low volume zone here. And right now there is a high volume zone down below. And this high volume zone is in confluence with the lower range of the weekly expected move, and also in confluence with this composite volume profile value area low. Also, in addition to that, I have projected a trend line here. And you can see this trend line also come up and pretty much intersect this low volume range, this lower range of the expected move. So this also in confluence with this lower range. So that's, with multiple confluence, then the probability is relatively high for this range to get tagged sometime next week. So here are my scenario. So first, using the downside, scenario. So we're basically looking for a price to try to push into this high volume node, this balance area, and fail to stay in, and then it will reverse back and then work its way back down toward this lower range of the expected move, and then start basically chopping around inside of this high volume node and see will it be able to hold this trend line here. So that is the downside scenario. And the upside scenario is for it to come back into this high volume, this balance area, and be able to hold this and come up and tag this point of control, this composite point of control. And if it could stay above this point of control, then look for the price to push up into this upper range of the weekly expected move. If you'd like to get more detailed analysis on the SPY, how I came up with these scenario, then go and check out my Substack page. I will be posting a more detailed analysis of how I came up with those scenarios in my Substack page. And you can visit my Substack page using the link smtraderCA.substack.com. I'm going to place this link in the description below as well, so you could click on that link in the description. So this is the post that I will be posting on my Substack page shortly after I release this video. and you can get a little bit more insight on how I came up with those scenarios that I described in the video. Okay, looking at the QQQ here, you can see the upper range of the expected move for the coming week is 318.50 and 317.60. And the lower range is between 297.25 and 293. And looking at this chart here, we see the price move down to this high volume zone between 308 and 305. Below this zone is the composite volume profile value area low near the 302.75 and a high volume zone, this high volume zone between 304 and 298. This zone here is in confluence with the lower range. And also there's this high volume zone, small high volume zone sitting in the middle of this lower range. And there is this projected trend line also in close proximity to the lower range, and that present a little bit of a confluence. So here are the scenarios. For the downside, we're basically looking for the price to break below this zone here, this 308 and 305 zone, test the composite value area low, then proceed down and maybe do a little bit of testing on the trend line, then come in and chop around inside of this lower range. And the upside scenario is to get back into this high volume zone between 318 and 313, chop around, and then move its way up toward the upper range between 318 and 317 area. And here's the IWM. The IWM upper range for the next coming week is between 195.30 and 194.90. And the lower range is between 183 to 180.50. Now we see that the price is doing a little bit of a look above and fail because it went above this composite value area and then came back in. So right now there is this high volume zone between 191 and 184.75. So it's sitting right underneath this composite point of control here. And there is another high volume zone down here between 182 and 178. Also got a little bit of a confluence with the lower range zone for the weekly expected move. So here are the scenario for the downside. We will look for the price to sort of chop around in here on this high volume zone and then break and dip down into the lower range and try to chop around here and hold support. So that will be the downside. And for the upside, we're basically looking for to see would it be able to break away, get above this high volume zone and tag this composite value area high. If it could break above this composite value area high and stay above it, that essentially has broken out of this value area, then we'll watch for a move to come back up and try to tag this upper range. Okay, let's take a look at Apple here. The upper range is pretty much the upper level. It's not much of a range at all for this week for Apple. It's sitting at 169.50. And the lower range of the expected move is between 157.70 to 155.90. Now, there's a composite point of control right near the 165. And this is the composite volume profile for this swing here. And there is a high volume zone between 163 and 160. There's also a low volume zone between 159.50 and 157.50, essentially this gap here. Okay, it's also in a little bit of a confluence with the lower range. And also there's a projected trend line that's also intersect a little bit between the gap and also the lower range. So here is the downside scenario for the coming week. Essentially, you're looking for this to break this high volume zone and dip toward this low volume zone and try to find some support right at this confluence here between the trend line and the lower range. And if it's unable to hold this trend line, then we'll come in to this lower range and possibly dip down to this lower zone here and try to balance here between the 156 and 152. That's this high volume zone. And for the upside is to move up above this high volume zone and see would it be able to break this high volume node here. This high volume node is sitting at 167.40. If it could break above this high volume node, then we could watch the price to try to make an attempt to move up to the upper range near this 169.50. If it is unable to break above this high volume node, then look for it to come back in and possibly just chop around and balance a little bit more inside of this high volume zone. Now looking at Tesla, Tesla had a 3-for-1 stock split last week. And the upper range for the coming week for the expected move is between 307.50 and 304.20. And the lower range would be $272 and 267.80. Now the upper range is in confluence with this high volume zone between 309 and 286. And there's also a high volume zone here down at the 276 and 268. Last week, the price closed near the edge of this high volume zone here. And here are the scenario. For the downside, we essentially are looking for the price to break below this high volume zone and get into this composite value area and work toward this into the lower range of the weekly expected move and see would it be able to just find support. And if it dipped below this lower range, then look for the price to move down to possibly test this pivot level here, this pivot high somewhere near the 264 area. And for the upside, basically just chop around inside of this high volume zone and tagging the upper range of the weekly expected move. So those are the possible scenarios for the SPY, QQQ, IWM, Apple, and Tesla for the coming week. Now, once again, if you want to see a more detailed analysis from me, go and check out this post on my Substack page that I have posted a little bit more detail and insight on how I came about with the possible scenario for the SPY. So be sure to smash the thumbs up to help me promote this video. Thank you for watching and stay safe.